Hi, I'm Jeff Richardson and I'm from Ada, Oklahoma. I am a digital cinematography major and I'm going to be discussing the evolution of the horror genre. The very first short horror film on record is a film by Georges Méliès released in 1896. It's only 3 minutes but contains many of the classic tropes we're used to in the horror genre. The 1900s to the 1920s showed new advancements which allowed movies to tell longer stories, including Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, made by the Edison Studios. In the 1920s, the world was coming out of the First World War. Horror films no longer relied on the old-fashioned theatrics. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is said to be the granddaddy of all horror films. Here's a clip from a short horror film I made, and I've edited it to sound and look like a film might in this period. The 1930s marked the end of the silent era. The advancement of synchronized sound might be one of the biggest revolutions in the horror film genre. Here's the same clip as before, but this time with synchronized sound more fitting for this period.
Hello?
The 1940s saw a decline in the horror movie. With the same old monsters and stories, films became predictable. Cat People and The Body Snatcher were popular movies made by RKO Studios that broke free of the period's typical traditional horror themes. By the 1950s, the world was a new place. The Second World War was over. The drive-in movie was a popular pastime to watch B-movies. Two of the most notable films of the period were Creature from the Black Lagoon and House on Haunted Hill. By the 1960s, we were experiencing another cultural shift. The Hays production code's power faded, and the independent filmmakers pushed the limits on things like nudity and on-screen violence. Alfred Hitchcock made a significant impact on the horror genre in this decade with Psycho and The Birds. Here again's that same short film clip, but this time how it might look and sound in the 60s.
Hello?
The 1970s was a tumultuous time. The Manson family struck fear in America. There was Nixon, we had Vietnam, and we saw skyrocketing divorce rates. Color was now standard in films, and we had films like The Exorcist, Carrie, and The Omen. This period was also known for the start of the slasher movie with movies like Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Black Christmas. Here one more time is that short film clip, but now how it might look and sound in the 70s.
Hello?
The 1980s gave us technical advances in practical effects, which meant that horror films could be pushed to entirely new limits. In 1990, similar to 1940, the horror genre seemed to be growing stagnant. Wes Craven pushed the horror genre to new limits with Scream and A New Nightmare. The 2000s saw films like 28 Days Later, as well as classics like The Ring and Saw. And we also saw dozens of remakes. The 2010s was a unique time for horror films with films like Hereditary, The Witch, Get Out, and It Follows, and many, many more.